Whether you operate one forklift or thousands, one location or hundreds, the new My Toyota customer portal can help you optimize your operation and material handling equipment. This one-stop, free-to-use platform is designed to help you take control of your information and make smarter decisions, all at the touch of a button. Register and access your data today at my.toyotaforklift.com. That's my.toyotaforklift.com.
The New Warehouse Podcast, hosted by Kevin Lawton, is your source for insights and ideas from the distribution, transportation, and logistics industry. A new episode every Monday morning brings you the latest from industry experts and thought leaders. And now, here's Kevin.
Hello and welcome to the New Warehouse Podcast. I am your host, Kevin Lawton. Today I am joined by a previous guest of the show. He was one of the guests from our ProMat series. We talked on the ProMat floor. We're going to talk to Mark Wheeler. He is the Director of Supply Chain Solutions for Zebra Technologies. He's going to talk to us about their recently released Warehouse Vision study. He's going to talk about the study, what the results found, and then we're going to get into a little bit about what does that mean and what does that mean for the future of our industry, and how do we, as industry professionals, start to adapt and change to meet these goals and get to a point where we're getting to that next level in our industry and improving efficiency overall. So, Mark, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Very well, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
Definitely happy to have you again. It was a good time talking to you. You gave us a really comprehensive look at your booth that you guys had at ProMat and all the different things that you're showing off there. So happy to be talking again and getting into this warehouse vision study. So why don't you give the listeners a little background on yourself and then a little bit of a background on Zebra as well.
Yeah, I've spent my entire career in supply chain execution in one form or another. I actually started out a long time ago in the 80s with IBM and doing a lot of work in robotics and deploying robotic solutions into lots of different operations within IBM. And that experience is actually becoming quite relevant now to the warehouse market as we see increases in automation and capabilities there. Spent some time in consulting and systems integration around automated warehouse design and build and in operations management, and then joined Symbol Technologies about 15 years ago, which became part of Motorola, which then became Zebra. And I'm currently our vertical practice lead for supply chain. It's a global position. My primary responsibility is to look out into the future and understand where business and technology are going and help us plan for that future.
Very interesting. So you're kind of the prophet of the business and technology, it sounds like.
Yeah, I've never taken on the title prophet, but, no objections.
Okay. So why don't you give us a little bit of information about Zebra? I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with Zebra and some of the technologies they offer, but why don't you give us kind of the broad scope for maybe the few people out there that haven't heard of you guys?
Sure. So Zebra is the leading provider of enterprise mobility solutions. And you can think of us as being the connection typically between planning and execution systems and the physical world in many cases. So those workflows for me, that's warehouse, it's plant floor, field mobility. But you look into retail, you look into healthcare. What we have are businesses that are increasingly connected to the physical world. And so using that visibility of both assets and people and materials to become more efficient and more effective. So it's a very dynamic area today. And Zebra, of course, will take technology that in some cases, the same technology you would have in some consumer solutions, but we're going to package it for the enterprise market. So for the IT folks, for the operations folks, for the end users, everything optimized around that use case. So we have folks like myself that are focused specifically on verticals like, clinical healthcare, and they're building solutions specific for that end user community, or retail in-store, or the field. And for myself, that's warehouse and plant floor and supply chain execution.
Okay, great. So we're talking to the right guy for our audience, definitely. So why don't you get into, I guess, let's talk about this 2024 warehousing vision study that you guys recently released about a month ago. So really, why don't you start with an overall view of, what was the goal of the study, and how did you guys go really about collecting the information for the study?
Yeah, so we do one or more vision studies each year that are focused on different areas and different topics, and it's a fairly significant effort where we will go out and sponsor the study to engage customers, either in an industry vertical. In this case, because we're looking at supply chain execution, we looked across all the main industry verticals. We also make sure that we're talking to folks in the different geographies around the world. So North America, Latin America, EMEA, Asia Pac, everybody's well represented in the audience of the study. We also make sure that we're talking both to the IT side of the house and to the operations side of the house. And the idea is to ask them to look out into their future and find out what the business drivers are for their business. What are the critical things that they're worried about and thinking about? What are their expectations around technology solutions that they're going to invest in? And what are the outcomes that they're hoping to get from those investments? So we're asking our customers to look out, 2 to 3 to 5 years in some cases, and let us know what they think.
Okay, really interesting stuff. So I see here, one of the big things I think that first stood out to me is that, there's so many people that, they're looking at augmenting workers with technology and looking into getting automation, which obviously is, we were at ProMat and we saw automation is everywhere, right? So, but one thing that really struck out to me from the study was, only 35%, say that they really know where to start when it comes to automation. So, how do you kind of address that from your standpoint? Because you guys obviously you help to, implement technology and put technology into operations. But how do you start to bridge that gap of people that are lacking the understanding of really where to even begin with new technology and starting to implement these different automations and augmentations as well?
Yeah, we think the industry is at a very interesting time, specifically when we look at, it's really across all the operating environments, but when we look at warehouse and to some extent plant operations, the industry is challenged by rapidly evolving business models. That's characterized mostly by the continued growth of e-commerce and
Definitely.
All the implications of that. All the customer expectations around, hey, I need my shipments faster, and I want to order in smaller quantities, and those trends have been ongoing, but they just continue to accelerate into the market and affect really everybody. So you might think of it as mainly a retail phenomenon, but it absolutely affects wholesale, absolutely affects manufacturing, of course, 3PLs that are trying to serve all of those verticals. Everybody's trying is being really forced to operate more quickly. And so there's a structural change going on in supply chain execution, and part of that is manifested by where warehouses are being built and how big they are and how many we have in order to service our customers. And then, so that's kind of on the business side. Then on the technology side, we have at one level this massive migration from Windows to Android and all the implications of that. And in that transition, the warehouse market is actually kind of the last to make the move in a big way. And that's what's going on right now in the market to a large extent, is that move is going on. And that's an important step. But then you see on the horizon, and in some cases, already moving forward, the accelerating availability of sensor technologies. In other words, I've got all kinds of sensor technologies now where I can sense the location. And in supply chain, we're mainly looking at location, but condition as well. But I can know where my assets are, where my people are, and do so in an automated fashion. That is transformative, and that's going to take years to play out in the supply chain. And as you mentioned, mechanized solutions, mechanization. We have these increasing capabilities, and we have solutions that are more flexible, more adaptable. So what we heard in the survey was, yes, 80% said, investing in new technology is absolutely critical to our future and our ability to compete. But a much lower percentage said, I think it was 35%. I actually know, I actually have a plan to get there, because it is a little bit daunting. And it's mission critical. We know that when we implement new systems in the warehouse, we can't have a service hiccup at all. All right, we have to be able to ship product every single day. We can't have any kind of lapse. So there's a bit of conservatism there and risk aversion, which is entirely appropriate. And so we have this disconnect. I know I have to invest in lots of new technology. I'm not sure what how to get there.
Yeah. Which one do I start with? Right. There's so many different things happening, I think, right now. And just being at ProMat, a couple months ago and seeing all the different things, it is for someone or an operation that doesn't necessarily have any technology implemented at all yet, it can be definitely daunting to think about, what do I really need and what do I really start? What will make the biggest difference for me? But it sounds like you guys are trying to, with the study, figure out where that gap is and kind of fill that in for people, which is a great thing. So you mentioned actually something before about the move from Microsoft to Android. So, and you're saying that, warehousing is kind of one of the last ones to kind of start to do that. Why do you think that is? And do you think that warehousing itself is somewhat behind on other technology advances too, and other migrations to different newer technologies?
We'll be back after a quick break.
You hear a lot about supply chains these days, because if the past couple years have taught us anything, it's that an efficient, well-managed supply chain is absolutely critical to keeping businesses successful and consumers happy. I'm Will Haywood, and I host a podcast called All Business, No Boundaries, where we talk about supply chains, how they work, what happens when they don't, and the innovations that are redefining what's possible in the world of logistics. Join me for insightful interviews with thought leaders and industry experts. We discuss how optimizing supply chains can break down the barriers that are holding businesses back. That's All Business, No Boundaries by DHL Supply Chain. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Well, I think it's largely a consequence of the type of work that we do in the warehouse. And what I mean by that is most of the tasks in the warehouse typically are pretty repetitive. Mm-hmm. The user interface is fairly rudimentary. The amount of information I need to communicate and capture on a step-by-step basis is not that great typically, although there are certainly exceptions to that. And as a consequence, the legacy user experience, which is terminal emulation for the most part, got the job done. Mm-hmm. And so while there are technical drivers and motivations and value in moving to Android, increasingly critical ones like security and supportability, there wasn't that push from the user community to make the move like you would have seen, let's say, on the retail floor, where I really, I've got to run 20 different apps, and I need a really intuitive, flexible interface. And so the value of touch-optimized solutions was very clear in that environment. What we're starting to see in the warehouse is operations sort of waking up to the value of those solutions on the warehouse floor. One of the things that we hear in the survey is that labor availability is one of their leading challenges. I think 60% said that was a key challenge going forward, and that's relatively new in the warehouse. It's not just yes, of course I want my labor to be more productive. Now I'm concerned about will I even be able to find labor, so that when new workers do come in, we need to have solutions for them that are easy to learn, easy to use, that are productive. And so they're of course walking in the door familiar with a touch user experience, and they're expecting that. And so a lot of the legacy solutions, from the WMS to the hardware, that were optimized around the character-based telnet, which worked very well from a number of different perspectives, and continues to work well, and will be a market for a long time. We start to see from operations say, you know what, I need something better. I need the capabilities of the touch optimized solution. So we see the WMS community and our partner community bringing those forward to the warehouse market.
Yeah, definitely. I think that you touched on an interesting point there too about labor shortages as opposed to actual labor productivity is more of a concern now. And I've seen it myself in my role as an operations manager. And even it's funny that you mentioned having more updated technology so these operators can come in and pick up a little faster, and training is a little less time. I've had actually people come in, and where I'm an operations manager at, our system is a bit dated. So we've had people come in and actually say, wow, this system is so old compared to the last warehouse I was working in or something. So it is an interesting point, I think, and definitely a key takeaway, I think, for people out there that are wondering whether they should upgrade their system or not. I think that's actually something very interesting, not necessarily something I ever thought of, that, making it more updated, and like you said, touchscreen interface and stuff like that is more familiar with people, obviously, with the prevalence of touchscreen phones and things of that nature. So that's a really, really interesting point. I'm happy that you brought that up. So I also see here, that obviously automation is a big topic. But I see that, 3/4 of respondents, it looks like from the study, still believe that human interaction is definitely part of the overall balance of the operation. And I think, from ProMat as well, what I was seeing, talking to different people, there's that kind of the two sides of the fence, I guess, where, people are believing that robotics are going to be collaborative, and then some people that are, striving to create the dark warehouse. What did you see from the study, and what are you guys seeing from, your interaction with your customers overall? What is really their thinking and, their thoughts on robotics in the warehouse, and, how they're going to affect human interaction and also labor over time?
Yeah, I think we clearly heard from our audience that mechanization is going to obviously continue to grow over the next 2 to 5 years. But right now it is mostly about augmenting the workforce and getting them effective. And if you look at a lot of the new mechanized solutions, which are terrific advances, in no small degree because of their flexibility and scalability. These self-powered units that we didn't have before, really. What they do, for the most part, is take out the travel time, which is non-value added time. We still have the person, for the most part, doing the picking, doing the sorting, handling the product. And, my own experience with robotic implementation, the one thing we learned every time we did another implementation was an appreciation for, the capability and flexibility of the human worker and what they were able to do, and how difficult it is to replicate that. Even with today's sensors and the new end effectors that are coming out and all of that, it's still a significant challenge. And to truly replace the worker today, for the most part, you need a workflow. You need materials that are amenable to mechanization. So they're relatively consistent and easily singulated and those kinds of things. And some environments will be open to that, and many will not. So augmenting the humans, continues to be a critical factor.
Definitely. So what are some of the, when you say augmenting the human, what exactly do you mean by that? Do you mean by implementing handhelds and things like that?
Well, there's an expanding, options there. I mean, fundamentally, you need to communicate to them. They need to assimilate information. You need to error-proof the work. So generally, that may be, for the most part, that's going to be some form of barcode scanning. And wearable scanning in e-commerce is clearly the way to go. If I want to scan at a highly, at a task level, if I want to scan everything I'm doing for error proofing, then wearable is the way to go. We see a lot of growth in both of those categories. We think wearable display technology has an important role to play here. Voice direction, voice recognition is going to continue to have a role there as well, and we're seeing that. But it's all of those. It's wearable printing. It's mobile printing. In all cases, what we want to be able to do is operate faster and operate with greater flexibility, which means we don't want to be printing a batch of labels and having someone come to a control desk and pick them up and then go pick, right? We want to be able to insert work in real time into the workflow, and we need the mobile technology to enable that.
Definitely. You want your workers to just keep going with the flow and just keep feeding it to the gun or whatever it is that they're using. I agree with that 100%. So, one of the other things I see, from the study that I thought was interesting, and I kind of touched on this briefly in an episode a couple weeks ago, but with the growth of e-commerce, there's also a huge spike in returns management as well. And I see that, from the study that, it says that decision makers they're looking for more visibility and productivity, looking to implement more robust returns management operations. So, how do you think that is going to change operations a little bit? I know that, returns can really be, I've managed a returns department before, and I guess to put it lightly, it can be a pain. So, how do you think that the future of operations is going to start tackling returns? Do you think that it's going to be more of in-house operation, or do you think it's going to be more pushed out to like a third-party returns processing center? What do you think that your customers are thinking about in terms of how are they going to increase that visibility and productivity in the return side of the operation?
Yeah, it's a great point, a great question. We certainly, I can remember not too long ago, most warehouse walkthroughs, if you went to the farthest, darkest corner, that's where you'd find returns, and
oh yeah, always put returns in the back.
Try to let's guide the tour around that area, But now we increasingly see that it's certainly customer facing. It's increasingly critical to customer service that you have an effective returns process in any kind of e-commerce operation. So it's attracting a lot of focus. It's attracting a lot of investment. So we're seeing more focus on really engineered material handling to handle the returns efficiently and effectively. More interest in not only barcoding but RFID to be there's value in RFID, for example, when I can automatically sense particularly when I'm dealing with complex SKU. I've got style, color, size. I want to make sure I get that right. So definitely attracting more investment. As far as in-house versus 3PL, we see all of the above. It's just going to come down to what makes sense for a particular customer in their particular situation. Omni-channel greatly complicates the number of options, and we see partners solutions like Dottle coming up with innovative ways of handling returns with a presence in the stores and kind of automating that process in the store. The other critical thing where there's a lot of opportunity is really on the information management side. So when it shows up at the warehouse, I don't have to spend a lot of time figuring out what I've got. Is it a valid return? Assessing the state of it and all of that. I've got the information readily available to make those determinations quickly.
Definitely interesting. Yeah. I found that very interesting. I think something everybody's so focused on. E-commerce is growing so much, but it makes total sense about how much returns is growing alongside with that, because the more that consumers purchase online and don't touch or try on or look at things physically before they buy it, there are probably a lot of things they're returning. So it makes total sense, and I think the study kind of points that out, and people are recognizing that. And it'd be interesting to see what happens in terms of returns and how operations kind of, like you said before, it was always kind of the, stick it in the back corner and, let's figure it out when we get a chance. But, now I think it's going to be more front and center.
Some retailers have built dedicated automated facilities, to handle this. And so they've really engineered it to a high degree. And I think we'll see more of that.
Really interesting. Can you speak to that a little bit about, how does that work?
Well, I can't really mention any names, but like anything else in warehousing, it comes down to the numbers. If you're big enough and you've got the numbers, you've got the volume to justify it, and you have a certainty about the future, so that you're going to realize the benefits of that investment over time. That's one of the reasons that 3PLs handling this has been such an attractive option for many, is that it is growing quickly. The service commitments around it are kind of changing and what the customers expect. The complications of, I said, dealing with the omni-channel. Do I put this? Is it sellable? Should I sell it from the DC? Should I sell it from a store? Should I send it to off-price? Should I scrap it? All these decisions are complicated as the omni-channel matures, and so it's not only just the raw engineering; it's the level of certainty over time as to whether I insource or outsource.
Definitely. Okay, so I saw too in the study, obviously one of the things as e-commerce grows and warehousing as a whole continues to grow. It sounds like across the board capacity utilization is growing, and a lot of people are planning on expanding their warehousing footprint, as you mentioned before. But I see that Europe is actually projected to increase by 26% on their square footage for warehousing, which is the most of any of the different regions that survey respondents are from. What do you think is driving that and making that such of a big difference in Europe?
Well, I think what we see is a lot of the need for increase in warehouse investment and space is exactly what we've been talking about with the expectations for service, which is driving e-tailers, notably Amazon and Walmart, for example, in North America, to build pretty large fulfillment centers in or very close to urban centers. Yeah. So whereas in the maybe 5 years ago you would look at that and say, well, certainly I'm not going to build a 1 million square foot distribution center in the 5 boroughs of New York. Well, now that's exactly what's going on. Yeah. So I just think that's it's just a more prevalent reality in Europe, from a percentage perspective.
Okay, all right, interesting. And I see too that in Asia, the Asia Pacific region, they're planning to invest in smartwatches and smart glasses. Now, how exactly are they implementing the smartwatches and smart glasses too? I mean, what are smart glasses? I guess first of all, is that like Google Lens kind of thing?
Sure. So,
what is that?
Well, it could be. There are a number of head-worn display technology. Okay. In market today. None of them are really designed for the warehouse worker yet. But we've done some early work with that. We've had prototypes out at trade shows for a while now, okay. And we think we've proven that form factor to be valuable. So the watch is kind of a variation on the wrist-worn wearable. We've had a wrist-worn wearable in the market since the DOS. Probably many listeners don't know what DOS is, but it predates Windows. So for over 25 years, actually, we've had a wrist-worn wearable, and it's been essentially in the same kind of use case. It's been for picking and sorting and those kinds of things. And what we want to be able to do is present information to the operator in a very productive way, so they can just glance at their wrist and they know what they need to do. So the head-worn display is just a natural outgrowth of that. It's going to be somewhat more productive to have information projected directly in front of your eye rather than glancing at your wrist. That's clear. And we think that that is an interesting solution. There are a lot of challenges to make that a solution that you can just have a worker go out there for 8 to 10 hour shift day after day and throw product around, cases, each pick, what have you. But that's what we're addressing. Yeah.
That's pretty interesting. Yeah, I haven't actually heard of that before. I saw it mentioned in the study, so I'm definitely interested to see how that works out and how that works. But I think it definitely has potential. So really, really interesting. Smart glasses. So one of the other things too I noticed is that 94% of respondents for the North America region are focused on trailer load optimization. And I remember that at ProMan you guys were showing off a solution that kind of works with that as well, a type of sensor that goes on the dock, if I remember correctly. And so how is that becoming more of an important topic? 94% say they're going to do something to improve or implement something to help them improve. How are you seeing from your customers that they're tackling that issue as that becomes more and more of an important thing for transportation spend, because we're seeing less full truckloads obviously with the increase of e-commerce and things of that nature. How do you see your customers kind of tackling that, and what types of solutions are they using to help them optimize better?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for bringing that up. As you say, transportation spend is not going down.
No.
They're also struggling with driver shortages and driver availability in certain geographies. And yet, it's an area, when you think about loading and unloading a trailer, even though it's consuming lots of spend, it's not an area where we've had good visibility to that process. We kind of see it once it's been unloaded and it's on the dock. We don't see how it was loaded, how densely the trailer was loaded in terms of utilization. There's no real accountability for that in most cases. Typically, and also on the outbound, we don't have a lot of hard visibility to, was it loaded properly? Did we utilize the trailer effectively? If not, why not? So, and then of course integration with the yard and the broader supply chain. So we've had our trailer load optimization solution in the market now for a couple of years. It's installed in tens of thousands of doors. We're continuing to invest and enhance that solution, and I think that's an important point solution that customers are very interested in, and they're interested in it for inbound in terms of particularly if they're paying for the inbound freight, as many large retailers are. They need to have accountability for how those loads were configured on the inbound, so that they can go back and say, hey, we can do better. We have savings opportunities here. And they need accountability on the outbound to make sure that they minimize damage in transit and they utilize those assets. So all of that. So that's sensors and it's analytics that are targeted for that task. Visual optics, LiDAR, 3D sensing, and then the analytics to make sense out of that. And that is a tremendous example of where I think much of the execution environment is heading over the next X number of years, where in today's world, for the most part, we gain visibility to inventory or a task or an asset when a human being does something or a highly engineered material handling system does something. If I go up and I scan materials on the receiving dock and I might key something in, and okay, now I've moved that inventory from pending to received or something like that. Increasingly, what we want to get to is where all of that data is sensed directly by sensors in the environment, and my management team is managing by exception. And so I think that the trailer load problem is a great example of how we can use technology and analytics to start gaining a lot better visibility to the physical processes by sensing it directly. And then I can alert the manager and say, hey, this trailer is running behind, or this trailer is not highly utilized.
Yeah.
Or we think there's some sort of, there might be a damage in transit risk here based on the information that we've collected automatically. Now, instead of that manager just walking up and down the dock, kind of coaching workers as the day goes on, they have a very targeted task to focus their time on.
Definitely, yeah, and I think that's huge too, as volume outbound and inbound increases so much, and we're talking about bigger buildings, and you're looking at buildings with 100 doors, 100+ doors, and trying to stay on top of all those and try and figure it out on your own is definitely difficult. So like you said, being able to sense that and point out those exceptions is definitely something that's going to be a big help for the industry. I'm sure it is already helping. As you mentioned, it's in 10,000 plus stores already. So, it'd be interesting to see how that improves even more, and how operations start to tackle that and utilize that information and analysis to really, hone in on those exceptions, like you said, and improve their operation overall. And it'll definitely help to increase those service levels too. So what do you think in terms of, overall, based on the study and, what you're seeing in the market and dealing with your customers, and since, it's your responsibility to figure out the future of our industry, what do you think is a typical warehouse in 5 to 10 years, or the future warehouse? What do you see as being really the most prevalent technologies, and what's really going to kind of stick out from the pack and kind of be utilized almost universally?
Well, great question. I think the future is pretty clear. How soon we get there is maybe not so much, but I think we'll certainly see more mechanized solutions. I do think we're going to see continued growth and broad acceptance of the role for passive UHF RFID for inventory visibility.
Okay.
Because there's just no other technology, there's no other technology that really works that well for giving a digital voice to materials, particularly in a warehouse environment where everything's in a brown box, as opposed to maybe on a retail store floor where I can do all kinds of object recognition. Can't really do that very, very well in the warehouse or on the transportation side. So passive UHF, I think, is going to continue to grow at an item level, and we'll see source tagging at the factory, and we'll be able to leverage that all the way through the supply chain for more and more items. And then we'll combine that with different types of active locationing technology, and there's a wide array that are already in the market. Zebra's in most of those, where we can pretty much track anything, anywhere, to any level of precision. Those will become more and more accepted. And the WMSs, the warehouse management systems that we rely on, will increasingly rely on these direct sensor technologies, like our SmartPack trailer solution, like real-time location solutions, to manage these environments in an increasingly automated way, so that I can, again, my humans, my management team, they're getting alerts, they're dealing with exceptions, but they're not having to spend a lot of time managing what I would call a positive path, that things are flowing the way that they're designed to flow. And the same on reverse logistics. So it's more and more sensing the real-time environment, sensing the physical environment directly in real time, leveraging analytics to optimize that. And, of course, that creates the foundation. That data will create the foundation so that we can leverage algorithms and machine learning techniques to optimize. So we'll be able to optimize material flow and picking and all those things to a much greater degree once we have that foundation.
Okay, great. So do you have any other takeaways from the warehousing vision study that you guys did? One thing, that you think really stands out above all the other findings? Well,
I think, there's a strong appreciation among our customer and partner community that there's a lot of change ahead. And a lot of opportunity in how all these technologies are going to come together. And, of course, we got to take that and apply it to what we talked about earlier, this mission-critical, real-time, risk-averse environment, where we cannot have a service hiccup, and yet we need to incorporate fundamentally new ways of doing things. And that's going to be the tension over the next 2 to 5 years, let's say.
Okay, great. So how can people find out more about Zebra Technologies and find some of your other great information that you guys have out there? I know you guys put out a lot of resources for the industry too. So how can people go about finding those? Yeah,
you can find that at zebra.com, and we've got just tremendous resources there for you to look at from an industry perspective, or all the technologies that we touched on today.
All right, great. We'll definitely post a link to that on thenewwarehouse.com, and we'll also definitely put up the 2024 Warehousing Vision Study there for listeners' reference as well. So, Mark, thank you so much for being on the show, and I'm happy to have you, and of course talk to you again. And hopefully we'll be talking again in the future as well, as we look to the future. And now that we know that you're the guy that holds the key to the future and what's going to happen in the industry, we're going to be looking to you a lot to see what's going to happen, right?
My pleasure, Kevin. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
You've been listening to the New Warehouse Podcast with Kevin Lawton. Subscribe and check us out online at thenewwarehouse.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want more content from the New Warehouse, check out our new video series called All Hands on LinkedIn. Just search for the New Warehouse on LinkedIn and follow along.